Let's get to know the world a little bit better. And that's with the help of different types of maps that shows different statistics. This is the map for average male body hair distribution. As you could clearly see, it shows how much body hair males have throughout the world. And when you look at around the Mediterranean and West Asia, that's where you find the most amount of hair. And then the least amount of hair is towards the equator, like Africa, South India, and South Asia. And you could also find it in South America. But a lot of South Americans are actually not natives to the land. They are descendants of Europeans, mainly Spanish, Italian, and a little bit of German. And you can find more hairy people towards the south of South America, like Argentina. Moving on, if you look at this map, you see the Native Americans in Latin America. The deeper the purple, the more there are. The most amount of Native Americans in a country is Bolivia, which 55% of the population are natives. These are the people that basically domesticated potatoes, which we've made a video on. This shows us that more than 90% of Latin America and North America is in immigrant hands, and you don't really find them in Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina, and of course northern Latin America. And most of them have less than 5% of the population, and this is in a way where only natives used to live here 500 years ago. But you also have to know that a lot of these people are African Americans that were brought here for slavery, where you can find most of them in the US and Brazil. This is the highest cause of death in Europe. The purple ones are different types of cancer, and red is cardiovascular disease and heart attacks. It's funny because the heart attack maps is basically the USSR. Maybe in the USSR they drank too much or had a lot of stress, because a lot of them have cardiovascular problems when they get older. You've probably heard different types of national anthem, and they always have a singer. But in the entire world, there are only 4 countries that don't have a singer for their national anthem, and these are the countries in red: Spain, Bosnia, San Marino, and Kosovo. But Kosovo is not recognized as a country by most countries in the world, so it's not a country yet. These different colored countries you're seeing has 3 or more official languages, and Bolivia has the most official languages with 37. It's crazy that there are 37 languages in Bolivia, and if you don't know it, you pretty much cannot communicate with one another. But there's always a main language that everybody knows so you can communicate, which is Spanish over here. If you pay attention, most of the countries that have a lot of official languages are not very good countries or advanced whatsoever, except Switzerland, but that's a country that's divided by 4 countries around it, so it has the 4 languages that used to be there. This map you're seeing is every country's top tourist attraction. If it's colored green, it has a lot of historical attractions. If it's pink, it's natural. If it's gray, it's a religious attraction. And if it's purple, it's a touristy country and there's a whole lot of different things to do. Like for example, the coolest ones you see is green, like Iran is Persepolis, or India is Taj Mahal. China is known for the Great Wall of China, and if you'd like to read most of it, you can go full screen and read all of them. The red-colored countries you're seeing were once a Titanic passenger in the year 1912. It's interesting because there's a map of mosquitoes around the world, and the only country that does not have mosquitoes is Iceland. Even Greenland has mosquitoes. The picture you're seeing is the map of aircrafts passing through the Middle East. And as you can see, the places that there are wars like Syria and Iraq, barely any aircrafts pass. You guys already know the longest country in the world, which is Chile. Not long in terms of actually length, because that belongs to Russia. But in terms of up and down, Chile gets the cake. But if you put this map on Europe, north of it will be on Norway, and the southern part will go all the way down to southern Spain. This is the Allies bombing the Axis powers in World War II. The blue ones are Great Britain, and the red ones are the US. At first, the British are bombing the Germans. After a while, when the US joins the war, they help Britain in Europe, but they're mostly focusing on Japan. But pay attention to Japan at the end of the war and the whole country turning red. This is the European map 500 years ago. And the most interesting part is modern day Germany, basically the Holy Roman Empire, where there's so many different whatever countries. There is a reason that the German people love Otto von Bismarck and see him as a hero, because he was the first one to unify all these states. We've all heard of Luxembourg, but a lot of people don't know how tiny it is right over here. But we want to compare this tiny country to other tiny countries, which is ginormous next to them. Singapore, Monaco, San Marino, Malta, Andorra, Liechtenstein, and the Vatican. So compared to Luxembourg, they are very tiny. The left picture is the Jewish population in Europe 1933, and most of the population are in Poland and Russia. But the next map shows us the Jewish population in 2015, and the only country that rose in population is France. The unluckiest geography belongs to Poland, and every power that wanted to take over Europe, they first began taking over Poland. On this map, every country in red has decided to conquer Poland one time in their history. The most interesting part about this map is that Great Britain is not turned red. This is the population density map for North America. When you look at the US, you see most of them are in the eastern part of the country, and that's because of the Mississippi River that keeps this part of the country alive. When you go towards west, there is less and less life because of the way the life is, until you get to the complete west coast of California, Washington, and Oregon, and the population lifts back up. When you look at the Canadian population density, they're mostly next to the Great Lakes, by the border of the US. And this is the Mexican population density. These two maps is for Africa and which country they import from. The left side is for the year 2000, which most of the countries they imported from was from France. And the right one is 2020, and the number one importer is China. This is the map of the world that has the most amount of islands. A lot of people think that Indonesia is in first place, but they're actually not even close. They are in 6th place. The top 3 goes to the Scandinavian countries. Of course, Sweden has a lot of islands, 267,000 and counting, but they're not giant islands. Maybe it's like a giant piece of rock counted as an island. Then you have Norway, Finland, Canada, US, and then finally you get to Indonesia. This is the map of billionaires around the world. Like for example, Russia has 83 billionaires. Then you have China at 607 billionaires. And the US has the most at 735. And you could clearly see the rest of them. This is the map where it's illegal to spank your children and hit them. If the country is in red, you cannot do that and it's considered illegal. As you know, the Chinese have different wording and letters for countries, and their literal definition of a country is very interesting for you to know. Like for example, Italy is called Big Prophet, or England is called Brave Land. They call France Lawland. In old countries, they have their own names. Like Russia is called Russia, or Iran is called Persia. They call Germany Moral Land. The map you're seeing and the ways you're seeing is the routes of Ibn Battuta. Ibn Battuta was a Moroccan explorer that went all over the modern world, and he held the record for the longest exploration before the invention of the steam engine. The reason it has different colors is because it's throughout his life, and he wouldn't go at one time. He would return and then go once again. Red was the first trip, then it's green, then purple, and the last one is the orange one. It took him almost 30 years to visit all these places and basically see all the important places in the world. And he traveled more than 120,000 kilometers. And this is when there's no cars or anything. He traveled with camels and horses. If you look at its route in Europe, he visited Eastern Europe, but he didn't go to Rome, one of the most important cities in Europe. And this was the reason that Rome was controlled by Christians, mainly the Pope, and they didn't allow not Christian people around there. And of course, Ibn Battuta was a Muslim. Japan has a lot of people living in there, and Tokyo is one of the most populated cities in the world, especially during the day, because a lot of Japanese travel there for work. During the day, Tokyo has more than 37 million people in there, and when you compare it to the world population of different countries, Japan has more people than these countries in red. The green countries you're seeing, more than 50% of their land is forest. And of course, Brazil is the most important one. In the northern part, you have Sweden and Finland. Most of the Amazon is in Brazil, but the most forested country in the whole world is above Brazil, called Suriname. 90% of this country is forest, and you can see the rest of them on the map. This map shows us the terms for syphilis in the 1500s. It's interesting because everybody had a different name for it. The blue countries call it the French disease. The red countries like Portugal called it Spanish disease. The purple countries like France called it the Italian disease. And when you move towards the Middle East, the yellow countries call it the Western European or Christian disease. And the Persians also called it Persian fire or the Western European Christian disease. And when you go all the way to the eastern part of the world, they called it the Chinese rash. And the Japanese also called it the Portuguese disease as well. In 1989, certain countries bordered Poland that no longer exist: the USSR, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. And this is the map today. The left map you're seeing is in the year 2008, and the right one is 2020. But what the hell are these lines? These are high-speed rails throughout eastern part of China, and they're all high-speed railing. What you're seeing is the nuclear power map of the world. Dark blue have operating reactors, and they are building new reactors. Light blue have operating reactors and are planning to build new ones. Then you have the green ones that have no reactors, but they want to build reactors. The only red country you're seeing is Germany, and they basically had operating reactors, but they decided to phase out and no longer have nuclear reactors, which is a terrible mistake. And the black countries you're seeing, like Italy, civil nuclear power is illegal. This is the map for the second languages people want to learn in each country. Of course, most of the world is green, and that means they want to learn English. But that's not the only one. The blue countries want to learn French. Yellow countries like the US want to learn Spanish. And then you have a little bit of purple countries, and they want to learn German, like Afghanistan. This is the hair color of the world. As you see, most of the world has black and brown hair, but when you go north and south, you see more blonde and red hair. This is the circumcision map of the world, and the more red a place is, the more circumcision there is, and the more green, the less. For Western countries, the United States has a lot of circumcision going on, and more than 70% of the boys there get circumcised. In the end, let's look at the addiction map of the world. The US and Libya have a lot of addicts, and that's the highest percentage per capita. But when you look at the Middle East, like Iran, Iraq, Syria, Saudi, and Turkey, they have a lot of addicts as well, and that means the Middle East, there's a lot of addiction going on. This was the third episode of getting to know the world a little bit better, and I hope you enjoyed.